deaths in just 24 hours. New York reporting its biggest single-day jump in deaths. And tonight, President Trump and his new guidance on covering your face in public. The sobering images in New York City, body bags taken from hospitals loaded onto refrigerated trucks parked outside hospitals across the city. Tonight, New York's governor ordering the National Guard to find ventilators from other medical facilities in the state and bring them to New York City hospitals in crisis. A bus driver from Detroit who posted this video concerned about a passenger who was sick and coughing without covering their mouth or without coughing into their arm. Tonight, less than 2 weeks after that video, that bus driver has died. Nearly a dozen governors under pressure tonight for refusing to issue those stay-at-home orders. Governors in Florida and Alabama who just issued their orders now dealing with their own spike in cases. And Georgia's governor who said he just learned people can be asymptomatic and still contagious after weeks of reporting on this, seeing cases rise there as well. The ER nurse, a 46-year-old mother of two, dying in Louisiana. The doctor who is now warning it's like they're playing musical chairs with ventilators, juggling them between patients. Tonight, we're one-on-one with California's governor on the desperate need there. The new numbers on jobs in America, 10 million Americans filing for unemployment in just 2 weeks. And with lines of cars, families waiting at food banks, the White House pressed. Why will some Americans have to wait months before seeing their stimulus checks? The Navy captain relieved of duty on that U.S. aircraft carrier after sounding the alarm about the safety of his sailors after so many of them tested positive. Today, cheered by his crew as he is forced to leave the ship. Tonight, families separated from loved ones who are fighting the virus alone in the hospital, including the 26-year-old on a ventilator who had no underlying conditions. Tonight, you will hear his first words to his parents once he starts breathing on his own again. And Lean on Me, celebrating the famous singer whose songs comforted us for generations.
This is ABC World News Tonight with David Muir.
Good evening, and we have made it through another week together, American life transformed. And on this Friday night, we have just heard from President Trump with new guidance on wearing masks outside the home. The president saying, in light of new studies, the CDC is announcing the use of a non-medical cloth face covering as an additional voluntary measure. Voluntary was a word the president repeatedly used with regard to masks. They do not want a run on medical masks in this country. The number of deaths surging in the U.S. In New York State alone, 562 deaths in just the last 24 hours, the majority in New York City. Tonight here, the staggering numbers. In just 2 weeks' time, we've gone from 19,000 cases to tonight, more than 270,000. More than 6,800 are dead. And take a look at this graph tonight showing the number of cases over time and the trajectory. We have talked so much here about trying to flatten the curve. The United States there in red, shooting straight up, well above Italy, China, France, no sign of it leveling off. The peak in New York, the governor saying, could be more than a week off, perhaps several weeks off. Growing pressure tonight on a handful of states that have not issued formal stay-at-home orders for social distancing to try to slow the spread in this country. The difficult images in New York City tonight, the city running out of space in the morgue, now loading bodies into refrigerated trucks. And New York's governor taking executive action tonight, calling on the National Guard to take possession of ventilators from other medical facilities across the state that do not need them, to get them to the hospitals in desperate need right now. We begin tonight with ABC's Whit Johnson, right here in New York.
Tonight, outside one hospital in Brooklyn, a somber walk. A team of doctors moving a COVID victim to a mobile morgue, an increasingly familiar sight in this stricken city.
Morgue space is filling up. This grim picture outside Bellevue Hospital, about a dozen of these refrigerator trucks lined up to hold the dead.
Overnight, the death toll in New York State jumping to nearly 3,000.
Highest single increase in the number of deaths since we started.
Funeral homes overwhelmed.
60% of them in this room are COVID patients.
Pat Marmo delivering tough news to grieving families.
I would love to pick up Grandma now and have her under my roof where I could watch her, but I don't have the accommodation to get her right now.
Tonight, across America, the National Guard building field hospitals in Michigan and Connecticut, disinfecting nursing homes in Georgia, But here in New York, Governor Andrew Cuomo giving the troops different marching orders to seize ventilators from medical facilities with lower needs and redeploy them to hospitals in crisis.
I'm not going to let people die because we didn't redistribute ventilators.
The Trump administration has criticized states begging for supplies, accusing them of exaggerating the need.
The notion of the federal stockpile was it's supposed to be our stockpile. It's not supposed to be state stockpiles that they then use.
But today from the president, a pledge.
We will take every action and we'll spare no resource, financial, medical, scientific. We will not spare anything. We'll get it back into shape, the Empire State.
In New York today, staggering numbers. More than 100,000 people testing positive for coronavirus. Victoria, a school nurse, is one of them.
I am worried about me. I don't want to go out like this. I'm afraid. But I'm afraid that I'm not going to get a chance to see my family again. I'm afraid for what's going to happen to our country.
Tonight, mounting pressure on the governors who have refused to issue stay-at-home orders. 1 week ago, KIV of Alabama was defiant.
We are not Louisiana, we are not New York State, we are not California, and right now is not the time to order people to shelter in place.
Today, there are 1,300 people testing positive for COVID in Alabama. 21 have died. Ivy now announcing a stay-at-home order effective this Saturday. Missouri tonight issuing its own order. In Florida, where a stay-at-home order only took effect today, cases spiked 20% in just 24 hours. Georgia held out until earlier this week, the governor insisting he only now learned that people without symptoms could spread the disease.
This is a game changer for us.
But that information has been widely known for weeks. President Trump has resisted pushing holdout states to act, but Dr. Anthony Fauci has been blunt.
If you look at what's going on in this country, I just don't understand why we're not doing that. We really should be.
Tonight, President Trump with an announcement about masks.
The CDC is advising the use of non-medical cloth face covering as an additional voluntary public health measure. So it's voluntary. You don't have to do it.
And in Michigan, a warning about the need for social distancing. Bus driver Jason Hargrove on Facebook saying one of his passengers couldn't stop coughing.
For you to get on the bus and stand on the bus and cough several times without covering up your mouth, that lets me know that some folks don't care.
4 days after recording that message, Jason developed symptoms himself and died this week.
If we just think about those workers across the country and just try to make sure to cough into our arms or cover our faces to try to protect those around us. And Whit Johnson with us again tonight. He's outside that temporary hospital at the Javits Center here in New York. We know that they will be taking coronavirus patients there after that agreement with the president. And late today, Whit, President Trump, just before we came on, announcing the new CDC recommendations when it comes to masks, the Surgeon General already acknowledging that the federal guidance, in his words, has been confusing to the American people on this.
David, initially the White House was against face coverings for the general public. Now they are recommending non-medical cloth masks. But President Trump emphasized that it is voluntary and that he himself probably won't be wearing one. David?
All right, Whit Johnson leading us off tonight. The news on masks there. The warning from doctors as well this evening about ventilators. One saying it's like we're playing musical chairs, already now juggling them between patients. Tonight, we're one-on-one with California's governor and ABC's Matt Gutman now from California.
Tonight, the virus continues to tear through the ranks of frontline workers. ICU nurse Larissa Anderson, the latest casualty, the 46-year-old mother of two. She'd been tirelessly treating COVID-19 patients in New Orleans.
They're not trying to be superheroes. They run towards, tragedy like when everyone else runs the opposite way.
In some states, up to 1 in 5 COVID-positive patients are healthcare workers. We've been following up with Dr. Ed Latham for 2 weeks now.
We're losing staff members. Our nurses are sick.
The toll, also emotional.
When I'm coming home, I can take a deep breath and I can fill my lungs and then all I want to do is cry because I don't know what else to do with the emotion anymore.
In Detroit, doctors say they are already juggling those life-saving ventilators.
We are running out of ventilators, and I feel like we're playing musical
chairs with the ventilators we have on right now.
That as the scramble for supplies accelerates.
So what do you say to healthcare workers that are ordering trash bags? Say they're not getting enough PPE.
It's unacceptable that they are, and all I can say is we hear you.
Which is why California's Governor Gavin Newsom is telling us the state is buying as much PPE as it can on the open market.
Are you finding yourself bidding against other governors in other states for PPE?
Yeah, no question. And we're bidding against the federal government. But that said, we also are one of the largest purchasers in the world. We are the 5th largest economy in the world, and as a consequence, we can outbid most.
What states like California are not doing?
Not waiting around for someone on a white horse to come save the day.
And yet every day, flickers of hope. That gauntlet of cheerleaders at Phoebe Putney Memorial in Georgia, their second patient off a ventilator.
We love seeing that image from Georgia today. Matt Gutman with us tonight from California. You're there in Sacramento, and I know that that state is scrambling to find that protective gear you just reported on for healthcare workers. They're also facing another problem, a huge lag in testing.
And it is a huge lag, David. The governor telling me it takes anywhere from 6 to 12 days to get results from testing. He says there are 60,000 people in this state right now still awaiting results, something he says is simply unacceptable. David.
All right, Matt, thank you again tonight for your reporting and the new numbers this evening on job loss in this country. And it comes after we already learned a staggering 10 million Americans have already applied for unemployment benefits in just the past 2 weeks. Tonight, the official government report now out showing 701,000 jobs were lost in March. That's the first loss in jobs since 2010. The unemployment rate, 4.4%. Of course, that's expected to go far higher because of all this. Here's Rebecca Jarvis again tonight.
Tonight, after the worst monthly jobs report in a decade, those $1,200 checks can't come soon enough for millions of out-of-work Americans. And now, America's 30 million small business owners are scrambling to get their share of the $350 billion in paycheck protection loans backed by the government.
We went from having a thriving 40-year-old business to having it be shuttered overnight.
We need help. We need relief.
The loans, a lifeline for small companies to help keep Americans employed. As long as companies don't fire their workers, they won't have to pay back the loans. But tonight, many say they're struggling to get access to the money.
And I was immediately rejected because I don't have an existing loan with them.
Bank of America started accepting applications on its website at 8:45 this morning.
We are prioritizing. We have 1 million borrowing customers we're trying to get through the system first.
The bottom line is we can't pay our staff.
Pat Fuge owns a toy store in Green Bay, Wisconsin. He went to his local bank instead of one of the big ones.
The other national chains that we work with aren't even ready to process applications at this point.
And Rebecca Jarvis back with us again tonight, reporting from home like so many on our team. And we want to stay on this issue of stimulus checks because families need them and now. And Rebecca, we all took note of this image, those long lines of people. They're not waiting for tests. They're waiting at food banks. The images from around the country, this one from Pittsburgh. And Rebecca, you've been reporting here that if you have direct deposit for your taxes, you could get this check within weeks. But if you don't have direct deposit, it could actually be months.
That's right, David. It is less clear if you get your tax return or your tax refund by check. You could be waiting up to 5 months for this stimulus money. Treasury Secretary Mnuchin was pressed on this just days ago in a press conference, and we will continue to ask and push ahead. David?
All right, Rebecca, our thanks to you again this evening. And we're going to turn now to the Navy captain relieved of duty on that U.S. aircraft carrier after he sounded the alarm about the safety of his own sailors after so many of them tested positive. Today, the remarkable image, cheered by his crew as he was forced to leave the ship. Here's Martha Raddatz.
If there was any doubt how the sailors of the Roosevelt felt about their captain, it is very clear tonight. One last look and a wave goodbye. Brett Crozier walked down the ramp from the carrier for the last time, relieved of duty. A mass of sailors cheering him with chants of Captain Crozier. The letter that got Crozier fired was a plea to Navy leadership to get the majority of his nearly 5,000 sailors off the ship as soon as possible, given the rapid spread of coronavirus on board. The Secretary of the Navy didn't accuse him of leaking the letter to the press, but showing poor judgment by not going through proper channels.
Relieving of him of command was in the best interest of the United States Navy.
Those I have been in contact with say many on the crew feel bruised and believe the captain sacrificed his career for their safety. David?
Incredible story. Martha, thank you. We have been reporting here on the families separated from loved ones as those loved ones then fight to survive the virus alone in the hospital. Of course, family members aren't allowed into the hospitals for fear they would get the virus too. And tonight we're going to hear from the families again, this time from Nightline's Juju Chang, who's been tracking several families, including the family of a 26-year-old who had no underlying conditions in the moment he was taken off the ventilator, breathing on his own again, and those first words.
That was the last time we saw him.
Daryl Ramos' young son, Taylor, is one of the outliers. Young, otherwise healthy, before COVID-19. The 26-year-old flight attendant on a ventilator for nearly 2 weeks.
One of the hardest things is when he's asking, if I go on the ventilator, do you know how long I'm going to be on it?
Taylor's family stayed in touch the only way they could.
Hey, Taylor, this is Dad and Mom.
Anxiously awaiting any call from the hospital.
Hello, this is Daryl.
The doctor has good news. Taylor is now breathing on his own.
Oh, that is awesome.
And then the moment they're all waiting for.
Hello, Taylor. Hey, oh, Taylor.
Can you say hi, Mom?
Awesome.
So many families across this country battling this disease together, but apart. Amanda Pomachan's husband, Titu, is now home after 3 weeks in the hospital.
What was that moment like for both of you?
It was the most joy I've ever felt. It really was. It felt like everything was whole finally again.
It felt like busting out of jail.
Those precious video chats with his wife and his 3 little girls keeping him going. Even the doctors noticed.
But he was still on the ventilator. And that was one of the times where I called and they put the phone by his ear. And the doctor happened to be in the room. And they said, oh my gosh, look, his eyes are fluttering when I was talking to him.
Tito's nurse told us every time he heard his wife's voice, even in a medically induced coma, his oxygen levels rose. His doctors called it the healing power of love. David?
No question about that. And we'll be watching Nightline tonight, Juju. Thank you. Dr. Jen Ashton is standing by on that issue. So many of you at home have been asking about a test for antibodies to see if you've had the virus without even knowing it, perhaps some immunity. There is news on this tonight, and we'll have it in a moment.
Because allergies shouldn't get in the way of a good time. Because a heart attack should never stop the heart of a family. Because hemophilia shouldn't keep someone from doing what's in their blood. At Bayer, everything